Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to the next episode. This episode, The Journey Through Entrepreneurship, is definitely an episode you don't want to miss if you are interested in starting your own business. I am so excited about this episode because this episode features a repeat guest. My name is Ronika Jacobs, and you found my podcast, Strive for More Your Best Life Now. While there are hundreds of thousands of podcasts out there, you've taken the time out to listen to this one. So for that, I want to say thank you. And for those of you who have been listening to me since season 1, I am so excited to welcome you to season 3. So without any further delay, let's get to it. Let's strive for more.
My next guest, Dr. Wendy Labat, is helping people strive for more in the area of financial strategy. Dr. Labat is known as the financial healer and is the author of Diagnosing Your Financial Health. She is a repeat guest of the Strive for More podcast show, and since we had such a great time, I invited her back to speak on entrepreneurship. Dr. Wendy has a Doctor of Business Administration in entrepreneurship and has over 36 years of experience as an entrepreneur. Dr. Labat teaches individuals and families how to make their money work for them, acquire the proper protection to prevent financial ruin, build a financial legacy, and become financially free to live the life they desire. In this episode, she will share the best strategies to get started as an entrepreneur. Hi, Dr. Wendy. Welcome back. Thank you so much for agreeing to be a repeat guest on my show. How have you been since we last spoke?
I've been great, and again, thank you for having me on. I'm really pleased to be able to share some wisdom and knowledge that I have, but I've been doing a lot. I've been on a lot of podcasts, some TV shows, virtual TV shows. I'm, like I said, finishing up on the book because it's going to launch September 30th. So I'm putting, those touches on it, trying to get that all finalized and staying on top of things, trying to just stay and do what I'm supposed to be doing. So far, so good.
I understand that. Well, previously you were a part of the Wealth Building Edition, and you talked about building generational wealth. And in that episode, you briefly touched on entrepreneurship, which is what made me want to invite you back to do an episode for one of my entrepreneur editions. So can you please share with the listeners a little bit about your entrepreneur journey?
Okay, well, I started my journey 36 years ago, and like I said, there was no social media, no internet, and the only thing you could do with a cell phone was make an expensive phone call. So, times were different. You had to actually network in person and get to know people and kind of build your brand just, one-on-one, where now you can do one-to-many. And, I kind of went through a few things, learned a lot, didn't have any business experience when I started out, so I just kind of jumped in with no real plan, or it was just, the spirit lead me to do it. And I didn't make any money at first, but I enjoyed what I was doing so much that, that it didn't matter, which let me know that that's what I was supposed to be doing. Anytime you can do your passion and enjoy it and not worry about money, then you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, So that's something I learned, the fun but hard way. So that's how I started my journey 36 years ago and counting.
So that is absolutely awesome. All right. So let's say someone has decided to start a business. I know lots of people who always have a great idea, and they decide to go ahead and take the plunge or take the leap of faith and start a business. So what are the first 5 most important steps?
The first thing, and this is what I advise my clients to do, is you got to reserve your name, because if you don't reserve the name and you pick a name and someone else has that name or they've reserved it, then they can sue you for using their name. So I tell my clients, first thing is, pick a name and reserve it through the Secretary of State, whatever state they're living in, through the Secretary of State. And they usually ask you to pick 3 names, in priority, first, second, and third, because if your first one is already taken, then they'll go to the second and then down to the third. But a lot of times, that's not a problem, but sometimes it can be. I know when I started one of my companies, I ended up with the third choice, which ended up being pretty good. It worked out. Create your organizational structure, like your LLC or C or S Corp. And again, that's done through the Secretary of State, or else you can, hire an attorney. It's really up to you. But if it's an LLC, it's pretty simple to go on the Secretary of State website and just fill in the blanks. If it's a corporation, it's a little more complicated, and you may want to, a lot of people, use like the do-it-yourselfers, but pay an attorney $500 or so and get it done right and, move on. Now, if it's going to be a nonprofit, a 501c3, now that's a whole different ball game. There's a process for that. You can still have your corporation, but in order to get the nonprofit 501c3 status, that's a process that I would hire a professional to do. And then you want to get your employer identification number, because that's key. That's what you use to open your bank account, do any kind of transaction. If you're trying to, you get business credit, you use that instead of your Social Security number. And you want to go open a bank account. And when you do, banks, they're not going to check your personal credit, but they are going to check with the state Secretary of State's office to see if your business, is registered with them. And then they'll, like I say, you want to use your employer identification number, and they usually will open the account right away. Now, that's the 5th one. It's kind of, I got a 5th and a 6th. I know you said 5, but the 5th thing, and I'm an avid believer in this, is to get the proper protection. As entrepreneurs, we tend to let that, be like the last thing you do, or don't even think about it at all. But you want to protect your health, your life, and your finances, because you're about to venture into something that's going to, like I said, you're going to be the responsible party. So if something happens to you, you want to make sure that you're not going to be financially ruined because of an illness or injury. You want to make sure that, if something happens to you, if you have a partner or even your family, that they'll be able to, you'll be an asset to them, and they'll be able to go on without your income or resources from the business. And you want to protect your finances to keep, from going bankrupt. So that's a priority, and a lot of people don't even look at that in the beginning stages of their business. They really should have those things in place before they even start the business. And then the last thing I would say was, work on your business plan, because your business plan, it's like your roadmap. So it's like traveling without a, direction if you don't have one. So those are the top things I would say that are most important.
Well, I'm so glad that you mentioned having a business plan. So how important is it to have a business plan? I mean, what exactly do you use it for? I mean, of course, I know that most entrepreneurs may have an idea. They have in their head about, what product they're going to serve, what product they're going to offer and what service they're going to offer. So why is it important to write a formal plan?
Well, it's important for a number of reasons, especially, like I said, it's like a roadmap. It's just like if you want to go travel somewhere and you don't know how to, get there, you follow with a map, and now you use an app, but still the bottom line is you get directions. And it's strategy, it's spelling out a strategy, and there are a number of, elements to a business plan. And, the business plan, there are a couple. You got to have an operational business plan and you need a financial business plan. But the bottom line, your financial plan can be part of your operational plan. So you want to start out by just having, like I said, a strategy for your sales, like a sales system, which would be your products, services, inventory, your customer management. Then you need a marketing, branding section that's going to spell out, how you're going to promote your business and, develop the image for the company with, your website, logos, funnel, doing drip campaigns, that kind of thing. And then your operations, are you going to hire employees? Are you going to have procedure manuals? You need to have them, but, if you don't have them right away, that's still something that needs to be part of the plan. You got to have your legal agreements and your contracts because, if you hire someone, you got to have the, legal things in place. And if you contract with an independent contractor, you need to have that in place because, I know from experience, and thank God I had them because, you could get sued because of what someone else does that's representing your company. And then education and training, how are you going to train your people? And then what do you need to know as the CEO or whatever your position is going to be in the company? And then you need a plan for your finances, your accounting, your accounts payables, accounts receivables, your lines of credit, your payroll, and then, forecasting, what your numbers are going to be if you're going to, if your overhead is a certain amount, you need to know how much, in sales you're going to have to get to cover that overhead and then subsequently make a profit. And then you want to define the roles and responsibilities of the leadership in the company, the board of directors, if it's a corporation, or, your CEO, CFO, sales team, and, that needs to be defined and spelled out. And, those are things you may not know everything in the beginning, but those are the areas that you need to at least try to figure out. And it's a monitoring thing. You can't just do a business plan and think that's going to last you forever. You want to kind of monitor it every quarter just to see what's working and what's not. Say if you're looking at your sales system and, you're not getting the results that you want, you have to, look at that. Give it 90 days and see what's going on. If it's working, great, stick with it. If it's not, you need to make some modifications. So it's not a one and done thing. It's, you do it and constantly improve it as, time goes on, as you get clients, as, like now we're pivoting. Everybody's pivoting because of the virus. So what the business plan might have said in December is not necessarily going to be applicable here in June or July. So it's important, but it's not, something that's set in stone.
Gotcha. All right. So I know there are several ways that you can seek funding for your business. Most entrepreneurs, they put up their own money to start out with. But could you share the pros and cons between business loans, crowdfunding, and using your own money?
Well, it depends on what kind of business and the scale of the business. Some people can start a business with their own funds. A lot of times they recommend you use other folks' funds, but you don't want to get in debt right away. If you can avoid the debt, I'd say, especially in the beginning, you don't want to be bankrupt before you get started. And when I say bankrupt, meaning you have more liabilities than assets. But, crowdfunding is a new, way to go. And like I said, that can be tricky, and it depends on what you're doing, your industry. GoFundMe, a lot of things, people are doing all kind of creative things, and they're getting money, but it's not, it just depends on what you're trying to do, what your industry or what your business is going to be all about. And then going to the bank, that could be difficult, especially if your credit isn't good. You can, try to apply for loans under the company name, but if it's a new business, they're going to want you to sign and be the guarantor of whatever, funds you get. You may have to use collateral like your home or, whatever assets you may have. So it just depends on, the circumstance. There's really no one size fits all when it comes to financing a business.
Absolutely. Okay. So you mentioned business credit. So how exactly do you build business credit? Is it similar to your personal credit? And, if you have one misstep, then it just kind of tears down your credibility for your business. How exactly does that work?
Okay, well, what you want to do is you want to start trying to get lines of credit with your vendors. Say if you have a product you're selling and you buy inventory, you may have to start out with cash on delivery or pay up front. But then eventually you can, unless you got good credit. If you've got good credit, then everybody's throwing money at you. But if you don't, then, just try to get a small, line with your vendors. And as you develop that relationship, then, they can increase the line. And then now I got creative with this on when I had my office equipment company, when I first started out 36 years ago. I didn't have a lot of money. I had some lines with my vendors, but then when I started getting the bigger contracts, my lines of credit wasn't enough. And I got to where I had some of my customers, they were corporate customers, and they were, promoting, supporting, minority, female-owned businesses. And, at first they were trying to get me to, they were getting me to finance their, receivables, because my terms with my vendor might have been like net 10, and they wanted to pay me in 30 days. So what I did was negotiated with them, and I was able to get them to pay me either up front with the order or within that 10-day period, so I can pay my vendor on time. And then, me showing that good credit with them, the vendor ended up increasing my line, and me being able to deliver, the customer didn't have a problem with, paying me within 10 days. So it kind of, you got to think outside the box when you don't have any money. But just trying to establish some smaller accounts, office supply companies, or just whoever you're doing business with, try to, get lines with them, and then have it reported to Dun & Bradstreet. And that's sort of the credit bureau for businesses. And once you get that established, then they won't look at your personal credit. Once you establish business credit, you don't have to guarantee it anymore. So it's a process, but it's similar to building your own personal credit, but you've got some opportunities there. You can, like I said, think outside the box. It just depends on who your vendors are and who you have to do business with.
Okay, so you mentioned Dun & Bradstreet. So there's only one in business as opposed to like your personal credit. There's 3 different ones. So there's only one. Is that correct?
Yeah, as far as I know, there may be others, but Dun & Bradstreet is the main one that, companies are looking at. It's just like depending on what part of the country you live determines where they're going to pull your Equifax, your TransUnion, or your Experian. If you live like in my area, Equifax is the main one. I think out your way is TransUnion in Texas. But Dun & Bradstreet is the main commercial credit review entity.
Right. Now, earlier you mentioned filing for an LLC. I know most people, they know they have a business idea, they have a name, they know to go and file a DBA, which is the name that they file on record with the county clerk's office for how they're doing business as that particular name. So why should you file your company as an LLC or an LLP in case of a partnership?
Well, you want to see if you're a sole proprietor or a DBA, then you carry the total liability for the company. If someone, uses your product or your service and they're not pleased with it, they can sue you personally. But if you're an LLC, that kind of gives you the best of both worlds, because you get the tax flexibility of a sole proprietorship, but you get the protection from liability of a corporation. So if somebody, if you're LLC, then if someone wants to sue you, then they could sue the company, but not you personally. So that's the protection. You always want to protect your personal. You want to keep them separate. You want your business to be one thing and your personal to be something else. You don't want them to be able to, take your house if something happens with the business. You want it to be separate. And that's why you want to have a formal structure outside of a sole proprietorship. You don't want to carry that liability personally.
Well, I understand that. I don't want to end up being homeless behind my business idea.
I know that's right. That's right.
All right. So, friends, they decide, they have a great idea and they decide to go into business, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and of course, they form a partnership. So what are the key parameters all partnerships that should consider? I mean, should it be 50-50 or should someone have controlling interest or where they're 51 and 49? What are just some best practices for partnerships?
It depends. Like I said, there's no one size fits all, but one thing you do need to do is put it in writing. You need to have a contract because even though, your word can be your bond and legally your word can be your bond, you want to have it in writing in case you do have to take it to court. And you want to just spell it all out because, you a lot of times you get so excited we're going into business, but you don't think about all the intricacies involved. So you really need to, look at, one person may be putting up all the money and the other one has the idea. So you really have to work those things out before you get started because, what may be a little idea that you come up with may turn out to be, a multi-million-dollar opportunity. So you want to make sure that whatever the agreement is, it's in writing, and then you look at it for the potential it could be. Because a lot of people, just underestimate and they say, well, okay, you get 25%, I get 75 or whatever. And then, when it comes down to where, it's my idea, but you put up the money, I feel like, when we're a multi-million-dollar company, I should be able to be compensated because it's my idea, but you may think, because I put up the money. So that needs to be spelled out up front. And the shares, this had to be a compromise about it. Like, so there's no one size fits all, but it does need to be in writing and it does need to be, decided up front. You can't say, oh, this is my friend, so I'll just trust that they'll do the right thing because you never know. Money kind of makes people go crazy. and it's not even just that. You just want to have clear direction about, where you're going and who's who and what, who's entitled to what share. So you want to do that up front.
Wow. I understand that for sure. I mean, there's a lot of friendships that break up all behind a business. And so it's really sad. But you're right. In business, everything needs to be in writing. If your business is official and professional, then, contracts is the way to go. I understand that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Lastly, can you talk about filing your business taxes? I mean, there's a lot of talk of some businesses and corporations that find ways to not pay tax at all. And then some people who just started their business, they also don't file taxes, and then they get into a heap of trouble, and then they have to find a CPA or, some type of tax attorney to represent them. So, how important are business taxes, which we do know that business taxes are important. But what are the best ways to make sure you can keep track of everything and make sure that you're filing your business taxes? Is it once a year? Is it quarterly? I mean, what's the best way to make sure you stay ahead of that and IRS doesn't come knocking on your door?
Well, like the old saying is, don't mess with the IRS. And I highly recommend that you get But if you start out right in the first place, like I say, you don't want to commingle funds. So you want to have your business account, your personal is separate. You want to have, if you have a credit card, a company credit card, from your personal, you don't want to commingle funds at all. That's a no-no. I don't care what it is. You don't want to commingle. Now, if you're an LLC, that kind of gives you the best of both worlds because you will file a Schedule C for the company, and that will be included in your 1040. So whatever profit or loss shows on your Schedule C, that, affects your personal, tax refund or tax liability. And because, a lot of people take a loss that first year or two or three. And then a lot of people are still working a regular job where they need those deductions because, the tax laws have changed. So a lot of things that you were getting as an employee exemptions, those aren't available. So, people are taking advantage of the business expenses. So as an LLC, you will file a Schedule C with your personal 1040. Now, if you're a corporation, you'll file a separate whole file income tax return altogether, which is the Form 1120. And that, is done on the corporation or the corporation. And then from there, if you make a profit, that profit carries over to your personal taxes. But you would pay taxes on it from the 1120. And then you would turn around and include that profit on your 1040. And, depending on where you are financially, you would pay taxes on it because it'll increase your income on your 1040. Now, if you take a loss on the 1120, you're not going to have to pay taxes, but you can take that loss and put it on your 1040, which could reduce your tax liability. Now, if it's a nonprofit, a 501c3, then you would file a separate 990, and that has nothing to do with your personal at all. That's strictly, for the nonprofit. So you don't get a benefit personally from that. So that's where, and you file your taxes. If you owe, you owe. Just make arrangements to pay. And if you don't owe, that's even better. But file them. You don't want to go back because it's a mess. I do taxes, and it's a pain when people come to me, I need these last 3 years filed, because you have to, create the scenario, and a lot of times they don't have all the documents, and it's a pain. But the main thing is to keep good records. Like I said, when you start out, make sure you keep your accounting. If you have to use, like a software like QuickBooks or something, keep track, even if you have to do it manually. Keep track of your income, your expenses, and your debt. Make sure you keep track of everything. All that is important, because if you go to a CPA, they're going to charge you out the yin yang to try to put that together. If you want to have to hire a bookkeeper, do that, because you want to keep track of those records, because that's key. So when it comes tax time, everything will be in order, and it'll be a lot simpler for your tax person. So that's what I would recommend. You don't want to mess with the IRS.
Well, I understand that, because I know I definitely don't want to mess with the IRS.
Me either. And then one more
Dr.
point with that. Okay, I'm sorry. One more thing I do want to say, because if you owe and you don't pay, what could be $1,000 debt initially could triple and quadruple with penalties and interest. So you don't want to, you don't want to let that linger, because IRS will come and they will confiscate any assets you have. They'll put liens on your property. They'll garnish any wages if you have any. So, you don't want to put yourself in that position, because that will strangle the business.
No, that definitely for sure is not something I hope anyone ever has to face. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Wendy, our time is up. Oh, my goodness. I hope that the listeners out there, anyone who's wanting to start a business, they heeded the advice that you shared, because it's so important. Entrepreneurship is a life of freedom, and it's wonderful, but you do definitely have to do it the right way in order to have longevity. So I have one last question. All right. So if you had the choice, who are two people, dead or alive, you would have as special dinner guests?
Well, I'd have to say my parents, and they're both deceased, and so much has happened in my life since they've passed. I just would love to talk with them about it, So I would have to say my mom and my dad, because like I said, I've had breast cancer, I've, got my DBA, I'm writing on, my book, I'm on the national speaking tour, my sons have graduated from college, and, just so much stuff has happened. I just love to just have a chance to sit there and catch up with them, even though I know they're looking down on me from heaven, but still to be able to talk with them, face to face, I would love that.
Man, that's fabulous. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you as always. Can you do me a favor? Can you take the time to let everyone know how they can purchase a copy of your book or seek your services?
Okay, well, I haven't put it out for pre-sales just yet because, like I said, September 30th is the launch date. But you can go to my website and just, kind of monitor it for a minute. I think we're going to start launching the pre-sales, probably the first week in August. We're going to have this pre-sale launch. But they can always, I am offering, though, a special gift for your listeners, a 20-minute complimentary strategy session, whether you want to talk about your finances or even about, getting advice about starting a business. You can just text the word TALK, T-A-L-K, to 770-796-4944. That's TALK, T-A-L-K, to 770-796-4944. And then our website is thefinancialcures.com, and that's thefinancialcures with an S.com.
Awesome. Any last words of encouragement for the entrepreneurs out there as they are striving for more?
Well, I just say go for it. If the Spirit is leading you and you have a passion and that burning desire, go for it, because that's where you're supposed to be. We're going through the COVID. A lot of people are losing their jobs, but it's really been a blessing for a lot of people because they're finally getting a chance to do what they've been wanting to do all those years, but were using the job as an excuse why they couldn't do it. So now is the time. Economic times are tough for a lot of people, but, entrepreneurship is just a blessing. Everybody's not cut out to be an entrepreneur, but those that are, go for it. And, it's the best world. I love being an entrepreneur. I don't know, at 36 years, my kids are entrepreneurs. It's a good thing because, like I said, you kind of write your own paycheck and, enjoy life. You help others, and it's a good life to live. So I say go for it.
That's wonderful. Well, Dr. Wendy, I love your conversations. I love your wisdom. You have so much information to share, and I just feel blessed that you have taken the time to stop by again and talk to me and talk to my listeners.
I appreciate it, and anytime you want to have me back, I am always welcome at your disposal. So just, let me know, and I appreciate it.
That's great. I wish you nothing but abundance and blessings in your future to you and your family. Please stay safe, and don't forget to wear your mask. Take care. Continue to strive for more.
All right. Thank you.
I was so appreciative to Dr. Wendy for being a guest on my show once again and sharing more of her knowledge and expertise about being an entrepreneur. She's shared some real gems, so I hope you were able to write some of them down. After all, she's been an entrepreneur for almost 40 years. That's as long as I've been alive. That's saying something. Remember to book your complimentary 20-minute strategy session. She's giving free game to my listeners, so don't miss out on that opportunity. Is there a topic you want to know more about, or do you just want to let me know how much you enjoy my show? Follow me on Facebook. Just search Strive for More Podcast Show. Give me a shout out. Tag me. I'll give you a shout out. I might even mention you on my next episode. Thank you for supporting me. My show continues to grow worldwide because of you and your support. So let's continue to push my show up the charts. Continue to strive for more and live your best life now. See you in the next episode.